So I just wanted to share kind of, if that's a kind of micro example, I wanted to share that because it may provide some lessons, and I'm hoping tonight I'll share a little bit, and there'll be time for questions and answers, and some of the lessons that we've learned in the U.S. may or may not be applicable, and there are lessons that you're learning here that hopefully I can take home with our young people as well. So let's talk about the current state of education in the U.S. because I want to compare it, and I'm going to need you guys to actually bring me up to speed on what our system is here. I know I got all the pre-work, and I read it, and then I got on JetBlue, and I started watching movies, and I quite frankly forgot what I read. So I'm going to need your help to bring me up to speed. But long story short, I want to make this comparison because it is important to understand systems. Community of practice, obviously there's the local in the classroom, there's in the home, but there's also systemic issues that we have to think about. So just so you get a snapshot of the U.S., and then you can tell me what the snapshot of Jamaica is. So U.S., when you think about systemic change, and that's really what we're focused on at both of my organizations, there are about 50 million children in the K through 12 education system. It's a very decentralized system, although the recent administration has tried to get a common set of core standards. But right now, every state has a different set of standards. They set their own standards. And quite frankly, because it's 95,000 schools across 15,000 school districts, the real power is at the school district level. So that school district really is dictating what is happening within the school and within the school system. And right now, the other piece that really, really shocked me is only 26% of all income levels in the U.S., only 26% of our young people go to and graduate from a four-year college, and within the communities that we serve, it's about 6%. So again, this is just grounding. I don't think we should feel, well, we probably should feel bad, but I don't want us to feel bad. I just want us to be grounded because as we think about how do you make policy shifts and how things are relevant, it's important to have this information. So let's talk about U.S. student performance a little bit and see what the parallels are. So this is what we know in the U.S. This is what we know right now. We know that with 68% predictability, and I'm sure some of these things carry, with 68% predictability, you can look at third grade reading scores and predict what's going to happen to our young people. 70% probability. You can look at those third grade scores and determine. And a lot of folks in the education sector, this has been around for a long time. Elizabeth Shore within our REACH did this longitudinal study. This data has been around for a long time, and a lot of folks in the education system didn't believe it. But there's another part of our system that actually did believe it. And right now there are 11 active states in the United States that use the third grade reading scores to predict the number of prison cells that they're going to need in the future. Okay? So we may not believe this data, but clearly there's somebody, and there are somebodies who absolutely believe that this is reliable and predictable about what's going to happen to our children. And I want to take a second to talk about performance data, because a lot of times we say, well, only 6% of our kids or 3% of our kids are going and graduating, and with 68% predictability, and I'm sure if I asked you, you'd be able to tell me what percent of our young people here in Jamaica are not reading proficiently at the end of third grade, right? Okay? But this is kind of what we do about data, and this is what I've found. It's very odd, especially with mobilized and educated folks, right? Has anybody, and maybe this is too private, I'm not sure, you'll just excuse me from Boston. Has anybody tried to lose weight in the last year? No, just raise your hand. We're going to have this is an open, honest conversation, right? About data, right? So, I mean, it's very similar, right? So, I've been a little heavy. I won't take off my jacket for anybody or at any of these events. But, so I was like, you know what, I really want to lose some weight because the data said I was a little heavy. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to step on the scale. I'm motivated. I'm all inspired. And so I went jogging, and it was pretty good, and this and that. I stepped on the scale. I felt good. I had a salad at night. I didn't eat after 6 o'clock. Everything that you tell you to do. And I did that for about a week. And every day I stepped on the scale, what happened, right? Lower and lower, right? And then the second week, well, I started to travel a little bit and couldn't work out, and I got to the hotel late, and that pizza sure looked good at 11 o'clock, so I ate that pizza, right? And the second week I stepped on the scale, and what happened? My weight had gone up, but it's okay because muscle is heavier than fat, so it's okay. I don't have to worry about it. I'm still progressing in the right way, right? And then by week 3, I've stopped exercise, my weight continues to go up, and I say to heck with it, at least, whatever. And you walk away from it. But that's kind of, honestly, that's kind of how we treat educational data right now. That's kind of how we treat educational data. Because if I said, with 70% predictability, the children in Jamaica, you can predict their future based on the third grade reading scores. And if I said, like in the US, where we basically have 70% of children, what I would describe as, and that's not what the system says, but I would describe as functionally illiterate, then if you're an analytical person, if you just take a minute to think about those data points, then it has to mean something to you. Annie E. Casey just released a report talking about the importance of reading in the U.S. proficiently by the end of third grade. I'd recommend you get it. But they basically say three things, and I'll say those three things, but then talk about this framework, because that's how we look at it. They say there are three levers, clearly, and I'll leave off the most important one, which is, well, one of the more important ones, which is the quality of instructor and the quality of instruction in the classroom. But beyond, outside of that, they say that there are three levers. One is a child's birth weight, so prenatal health. The second is what happens to a child from 0 to 5, but particularly 0 to 3, because that's the most critical brain development years. And then third, how we use time, so particularly the summer learning months. Let me go back, I'm sorry. Did anybody see that slide? No. Okay, you didn't see it? I do want to stop for a second, because we always talk about education, and sometimes when I listen to people, I don't know if we're having the same conversations. And so I just wanted to ask, and just please raise your hand and we'll just go through it. Just what is the purpose of education before we start talking about what a quality education looks like? Just tell me what you think the purpose of an education is. So John Dewey, an education theorist, said really that there are three purposes of education, and they go in a pyramid. And the pyramid, the base of the pyramid is the least important, rising to the highest importance. So the base of the pyramid is to prepare for career, right? Education is to prepare us for work and for career. The next one is to prepare us for living in society, how we communicate with others, how we resolve conflict. That's what the purpose of education is supposed to be at the second level. And then the third level, purpose of education, you wanted to say something, ma'am? To make you independent. So, and I'd put that right under the self category, really self-actualization. So I presented this 2 weeks ago and folks were like, yeah, to teach you become better at being selfish. I was like, no, it's not to teach you to be selfish. It's self-actualization, right? So that's what really the purpose of education is. So what are the pillars of what I've seen as you think about a framework for high-quality educational opportunities? The framework's pretty simple. Oversimplified, for sure, but it's a pretty simple way to think about it. There are two levers if you really want to improve the quality of education for our children. And it's either time or people. So people or time. So let's go a little deeper on some of those levers on the people side, and then let's go into the time side. On the people side, it's highly engaged parents. I mean, people say it all the time, right? Parents are children's what? First and most important teachers, right? We all know it, right? First and most important teachers. Second part is then the quality of our instructors. Do they know their content? Do they actually love? Do they believe in the children who are sitting in front of them? Do they have high expectations for who our children are and who they can become? So a highly qualified teacher, and then strong principles. Strong leaders who own their schools, who are responsible for the outcomes of their children. No excuses, high expectations. On the time side, and you hear a lot of the educational movement, quite frankly, in the United States recently has been, at least in the last 5 years, has been on this people side. You're trying to create performance incentive pay for teachers, trying to loosen up union contracts that allow you to promote and support those who are the best, but also to remove those who are ineffective, right? So that's where a lot of but the other side of the equation is the time equation. So you guys have heard the statistics before, but you know in India and in China and in many other industrialized countries, children are going to school on average 30 to 45 more days than our children. Every year they're going to school for 30 to 45 more days, and in a K through 12 education, that turns into about 2 to 3 extra years of schooling that our young people are having. So the two organizations that I'm blessed to lead, one really focuses on how do we get our children to school ready to learn, and the other focuses on summer learning and use of time. And I'll go a little bit deeper into both of these. So on the first one, Reach Out and Read, it's focused on school readiness. And the equation, it may, again, be oversimplified, but it may not be. So the data is saying that, in essence, school readiness equals school success. So we have a lot of push right now to end high school dropouts, and people are putting billions into this, and they're starting at 9th grade. It's just wrong. You're in the wrong place. The evidence is saying brain development is greatest from 0 to 3, and at least in the studies that have come out recently, it's saying that if a child shows up below grade level, and right now about 35% of children do in the US, that 88% of them will never catch up. So all the interventions, all the expenses, 88% of them, about 88% of them will never catch up to where we want them to be. So let's look at kind of the experience of 2 children. I had this as Michelle and Barack before, but somebody didn't like it, so I moved it out and put in David as opposed to Barack. But it's 2 children basically born in the same hospital, but they're in 2 different socioeconomic status. One is from a middle income or upper income family, and this is all kind of, the only unfair part about what I'm saying is it really doesn't come down to income at the end of the day. It comes down to, on average it does, that's how it's playing out, but it really comes down to, are the parents engaged or not engaged? So I don't want to leave that as a proxy, because it really is the engaged parent wins versus the less engaged. But this is kind of how statistics are showing. And the other child is born into poverty. So you watch and you look at the trajectory of what happens at age 2, at age 3, 4, 5, and when they hit school. So it's hard to read, I know, in the back, so I'll just kind of share. The words heard per hour, again, this is data from the US, so it may or may not be relevant, is about 2,100 if you're in an upper income or if you're in a highly engaged parent household. The words, if you're in a lower income, are about 600. The words that you know, that's by hour. The words that you know by age 3 is over 1,000 versus 500. So you know about double the words by age 3 if your parent is talking to you, singing to you, creating songs with you, having conversation with you, right? You have about double the word knowledge by age 3. By age 4, the number of words that you have heard, this is called the 30 million, have you guys heard this? 30 million word gap, right? 30 million word gap. By age 5, the letter of the alphabet, a child who's spoken to, has been exposed to literature, knows 22 letters of the alphabet, and most of our children know about 9. So what does this play into? How does this play out kind of on the first day of school? As I shared with the Casey study, they found that of the children who are arriving below grade level, they're arriving about 1.4 to 2 years below grade level. These are 5-year-olds. They're almost 2 years below grade level, and they're 5 years old. And as we said, many of them will not catch up. We've found that the pediatrician's office is a great place, with mandatory vaccines. About 96% of our young people are seeing their pediatrician from 0 to 5. It's honestly, the data skews, it's more 0 to 3, and it gets lighter and lighter as the children get older, but they're seeing them during the critical 0 to 3 years. The other part is that the parents trust their pediatrician. When your pediatrician says this will be good for your child, so they're talking about safety, they're talking about nutrition, but also emphasizing the importance of reading, we're finding that our families transition.